Donald Trump has just survived an assassination attempt. The former president was addressing a public meeting in Pennsylvania in the United States when a shooter fired a couple of shots at him, narrowly missing the former president. Donald Trump had an incredibly miraculous escape. The shooter was neutralized by counter-sniping units. Discussing these sensational turn of events with me today are two of India's finest experts in the art and science of sharp shooting. Vivek Krishnan, CEO of SSS Defence, a Bengaluru-based company that manufactures sniping rifles. In fact, it's the only private sector company to make sniper rifles. And also joining me is Abhijeet BS, Vice President Business Development of SSS Defence. Gentlemen, welcome to News 9. Lots of questions to ask you today.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Vivek, I want to start by asking you this. What an incredible set of events that we've woken up to in India. The fact that a presidential nominee survived an assassination attempt so close to him, a sniper lying just a few hundred meters away from what we saw, loosed off a couple of shots. President Trump was incredibly lucky to survive that assassination attempt. Tell us from the perspective of someone who makes these rifles, what we just saw there. What a miraculous escape it was for President Trump. Tell us what you just saw.
Well, I think in the very first place, he's got phenomenal luck riding behind him. But even before I kind of get into the subject matter of, what exactly happened and what we believe was used in all of this, I think the first point that we've got to mention here is this, that, an event of this sort is unprecedented, right? We've had assassinations of a public nature of this sort happening possibly in the last century. In the last 20 years, I've not seen anything of this sort happen in the US. I mean, the last time I saw something of this sort was when I was a kid and Reagan survived an assassination attempt on his life. So waking up this morning to see that there was a shooter who took a shot at former President Trump, and the fact that he managed to escape, that is like a very, very rare event of sorts. As sniper rifle manufacturers, caveat here, we try our level best to understand the system, we try our level best to understand the user, his mindset, but at no point in time can we ever be qualified experts, or for that matter, people whose words can be taken at face value on this one, because there are a whole, thousands of people who are trying at this point in time to figure out exactly as to what happened. But what we'll try and do is give you an idea as to, what we believe was used in all of this, both by the sniping team as also the counter-sniping team, what might have gone right, what might have gone wrong. The jury is still out, and there'll be a lot of experts who will kind of comment on this in the course of the next few days. I've got Abhijeet online with me because of the fact that amongst all of us, Abhijeet is the one who kind of bridges that gap between the technical as also the shooter. He's also one of the most experienced shooters amongst the engineering team that we have, both for short ranges as also for long ranges. And so when it comes to matters of shooting and how exactly somebody might react in the circumstance, I'll leave it to Abhijeet to talk. But to start with, what we understand at this point in time is that the shooter used an AR-15, right? Standard AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, 5.56 by 45 caliber, should be able to hit a target at 150 meters if he's an average shot. And I think he came very close. Let's put it this way. Just because of the fact that he missed a year, one should not be looking at this and saying he's a bad shooter. Possibly unlucky. That's the way I would kind of look at this. If someone else was there with a little more expertise, I don't know whether he was using a scope, whether he was using an average scope or a low power variable magnification scope, or maybe an even better scope. We don't know. The jury is still out on that one. But the fact is that he came very, very close, right? Secret Service, what everybody seems to be pointing to is that there was a dismal failure, that you actually had, a clear point. It was literally a sniper's paradise for him to kind of take shots at the president from that particular location. And considering that you've got drones, you've got helicopters and the likes, not being able to find that particular shooter in that location was quite a failure on the part of the Secret Service. I can't imagine something of that sort happening because, as you know, the Secret Service just gets one chance, right, to the other side, and that's the end of it. Just one chance to the other side, and they're finished. Whether the rifle that the shooter was using, and I'll differentiate between a shooter and a sniper here. The shooter is a guy who shot, and the snipers were the ones who kind of shot back. I think he had about 3 to 4 shots. I believe some people say it was 5 shots, but I believe he had 3 to 4 shots. The first shot is most likely the one that got him. Because by the time the first shot went through, normally when a person gets shot at, he doesn't feel it, right? It's just the whoozing sound that kind of, gives an indication that he's been shot at. And if you hear that sound, you're lucky. Because most of the time you don't hear that sound, you're dead by then, right? After that sound, I think President Trump just moved down. So it's very likely that the rest of the shots basically went all over the place. That one shot was a very close shot. What the guys on the other side, which is the counter snipers, did thereafter is what we will talk about in little more detail. But for now, I think I can state very clearly that the bullet just missed its mark. The average rifle that he was using might also have been one of the reasons for him losing the target. But 150 meters or 150 yards is nothing, right? There are guys who would take regular shots of the target. Yeah.
Yes. So, Abhijeet, I'm going to bring you in on this point. Vivek, thanks for setting that up to explain, that there were 2 aspects that we were seeing. And I think this is the footage that law enforcement agencies, special protection units, military snipers are going to study across the world because of all the different aspects that it throws up, the threat perceptions that it throws up, snipers, counter snipers, the shooters, of course. But Abhijeet, explain to us, lay people, what is the difference between a shooter, as Vivek mentioned, and a counter sniper? We saw counter sniper units there. What were they really doing when those first shots were fired? And how did they retaliate? How did they respond? Break down for us what we just saw.
Yeah. First of all, like Vivek said, Trump was very lucky to survive this. And just to break down the background of what the shooter was doing and the counter sniper was doing, like Vivek mentioned, the shooter had one shot, and it was probably what he said was right. Probably the first shot was the one which he would have all the time to prepare for and take that initiative shot. Because the minute you take the first shot, you are trying to protect your location and also trying to cover from any counterfire which would be expected. So the shooter was probably right on taking the first shot. He would have got it right if he did, but anything else would have been just spray and hope to God it hit him. But the counter snipers, obviously, the first thing is obviously lapse in the security on the Secret Service. Giving a shooter a stance like that, a prime location of 150 yards and a clear line of sight to give it to the president, to take a shot at the president, is very surprising, as a matter of fact.
It's shocking as well, Abhijeet. Sorry to interrupt you there, but because we saw that BBC interview where you had a bystander saying he actually saw the shooter climb up onto the roof, lie prone, prepare, and then take that shot. This suggests a security breach, and he wasn't even hiding. He was like exposed. And as Vivek mentioned, this is the kind of shooter that a drone or someone with a pair of binoculars would have picked up very quickly. Why did those 2 counter snipers miss this?
I saw the footage as well. See, looking at the position of where the counter snipers were placed, he was at an inclined position lying behind, and just probably enough not to get in the line of sight of the counter snipers is probably what has happened, because he was standing on a slanted roof. He was laying down on a slanted roof and just positioning himself to take that shot. That could probably be the reason why they were not able to detect him. But the technology which the US has, this is just a mistake on their side, that they were not able to detect him much earlier, even though bystanders were trying to spot show the counter snipers that there is something which is happening on the roof over there. So that seems to be a very big tragedy on the security side over there. Looking at the angle also, it's just my observation over here. Looking at the position of where the counter snipers were placed, very small point of view, or probably line of sight with the counter snipers, with the shooter's location. This could probably be the reason why they took a few seconds before they were able to retaliate with a shot. By that time, the shooter would have been obviously try to cover his location, or try to move from his location, or try to get as many shots in, hoping to hit him, hoping to hit the target. So this is probably what has happened over there. And by the time the counter snipers took the shot, I think President was already safe. He was gone prone in position, and he was able to take that cover and get into protection safely.
See, we always look at sniping from contextual perspective, right? This is not Syria. This is not Iraq, where you know there is an enemy on the other side, right?
Yes.
Kind of come in with this mindset that there's no enemy on the other side, right? And I personally would also like to think here that despite the fact that the counter sniper had seen this guy on the roof, I think he was hesitant to take his shot.
Right.
If the same thing had happened in Syria, there's a very good chance that the other guy would be toast. There have been instances in the US when people might take shots, at somebody who was looked upon as a potential threat, and then would have landed up in more trouble thereafter. In the event, the guy was nothing but, a drunkard lying on a roof, right? But again, context should have also kind of given the thought to the counter sniper here that, hey, listen, this is Secret Service area. Nobody walks around, even if Philadelphia is an open carry zone. Nobody walks into an area which has got Secret Service, and nobody walks into an area where a former president is making a speech carrying a rifle. I mean, you got to be a fool to do that, right? So there's obviously something at stake in there. So I think the fact is this: the counter sniper was definitely at fault, and the lack of a war context possibly is the reason why he reacted late.
Absolutely. Vivek, when you mentioned that, I was just dialing back to the 8th of July, 2022, when former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, you remember that, he was assassinated in broad daylight in full public view. And there also the same thing happened. You had the shooter with a crude homemade gun.
Absolutely.
He fired the first shot. He missed. He reloaded, and then he fired a second time. And that is the bullet that actually got Prime Minister Abe, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And he never survived that thing. And so it was like, as you just mentioned, that, it's possibly the mindset of the bodyguards, the security forces around, that they're not prepared for a war zone, because this is exactly what some NSG officers told us when they saw that footage of Prime Minister Abe going down. This is possibly the bodyguards were lulled into some kind of false security. It's a civilian area. They're not expecting a shooter to come out there and fire at the former prime minister. So this is a very valid point. The fact that possibly this the counter sniper did actually see this person on the roof, but he just thought he dismissed it. We don't know the full facts of it yet. But coming back to that point that you mentioned earlier, Vivek, of the fact the choice of his weapon. Now, what we believe is that the shooter has used an AR-15, which is, for our viewers, it's an M4-based platform, semi-automatic weapon. And judging by the kind of shots that we heard that were fired, that was a semi-automatic. It fired a succession of single shots. Could the possible choice of the AR-15 have actually saved Trump, Vivek? You mentioned that earlier on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Abhijeet will talk more on that one. We've had enough experience of having shot single shot bolt action rifles versus semi-automatic rifles, and the choice of the caliber, the choice of the rifle, both of which were key reasons why Trump was saved.
Yeah,
choice of the caliber, choice of the rifle. Abhijeet, you want to weigh in on that? The fact that it was actually the first choice.
Sorry.
That saved possibly.
Yeah. So the AR-15 is pretty common rifle in the United States. It's in the thousands or hundreds of thousands, if not everybody who is a rifle owner in the US will probably have an AR-15, and it comes in very variable for features and variable formations. But at the end of the day, it is a rotating bolt semi-automatic rifle. It is accurate to a certain distance, but in terms of user operation, everything, it is still a semi-automatic rotating bolt rifle. So what happens is you have the recoil, then you have your loss of sight during while you're taking a shot. So it takes a few seconds for you to recalibrate after every shot of that AR-15. Even though the 5.56 45 is a very light round, but you still have to recalibrate, reposition yourself after every single shot. On the other hand, coming to a closed bolt sniper rifle system, that itself is inherently much more stable, much more powerful. You are able to take consistent shots. You are able to retain your target in sight for a longer period of time, giving that better efficiency and better consistency in a matter of in the terms of sniping. Although the civilian rifle is not meant for this, but like he said, 150 yards is something which is fairly doable on the AR-15, but not like the way it was shot at, not shot the how the user was using it. Yeah.
To give you context, in
Right.
of the sniper rifles, be it the 308 sniper rifles or the .338 Lapo or Magnum sniper rifles,
Yes.
in regular firing mode, we would hit targets at 100 meters or 150 meters within a square of about 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters. I can give you images where we've had one bullet going to the other bullet hole, right? So, yeah, okay, fine. You could say that we're not shooting under pressure, right? We're not sweating it out. We're not scared of the situation and so on and so forth. But the fact is that, any Remington 700 hunting rifle or a .300 Winchester Magnum rifle, if that was to be used in here, be it a bolt action rifle,
We would have been talking about a different case right now.
it would be a different case.
Absolutely. We would have been discussing the, yeah, and Vivek, when you mentioned a hunting rifle, my thoughts went back to 1962 when you had President John F. Kennedy's assassination by Lee Harvey Oswald. And there he used a bolt action sniper rifle, a hunting rifle.
I don't really know, but I can tell you there are plenty of hunting rifles all across the United States of America. You can find
Yes.
them, I mean, as common as an AR-15 is, so is a hunting rifle. I mean, you'd go there and you would not miss a deer or a hare at 100 meters.
Right.
Let me be honest with you. An average shooter would not miss a deer or a hare at 100 meters. I can understand 300 meters, 500 meters, a little more difficult. But
On the AR, yeah.
yeah, I mean, on the
Right.
AR,
So
a 100-meter
Yeah.
shot, people can potentially miss. But if this was to be a hunting rifle,
Right.
a standard bolt action rifle, Remington style, there's no chance of the bullet missing.
There's no chance.
Average-
So it's
even for an
incredibly
average-
lucky again, yes, that he would have, not missed if he were using a hunting rifle, and that's again brings back the, how incredibly lucky Donald Trump was. The fact that the choice of the weapon, and this is an assault rifle that it's been the subject of much debate in the United States. A lot of people wanting to ban assault rifles of the AR-15 variety. There's been growing calls for that. And this is possibly the proliferation of such weapons is possibly something that saved Donald Trump. But Abhijeet, the counter snipers now, they acted late, they fired back, they killed the shooter. Can you just describe to us the kind of equipment that you saw on the counter snipers? What were they armed with? We saw some very unique tripod kind of platforms that they had mounted their rifles on. Just explain to our viewers what we were seeing.
Yeah, by the looks of it, it looked like the M24 M24 E1 series sniper rifle, and he had the optics, the rangefinder, all of the gadgets on it, and it was mounted on a tripod. So he had all the technology in his hands to make sure that he had a very good shot the first or second time he took his shot. So he was very well prepared. A tripod is usually used in urban areas or any other areas where you have less seating position, or a being prone position is not comfortable. You're able to have a better vantage point by using a tripod because you're at a higher position. So this was he was very well prepared to take a shot, as a matter of fact. The tripod is usually very stable at those ranges, 100, 150 meters, 100, 200 meters. It's very stable at that point. He gets a full range of motions, up, down, on a 360-degree rotation with the tripod. So he's able to cover that. And looking at the optics in the image as well, he had a rangefinder located, he had the optics, he had the modern day sight, he had a very good, powerful telescopic sight as well. So this should have made it very easy for him to locate and engage the shooter within a matter of a few minutes or a few seconds, as a matter of fact. He could have done that very easily. Yeah. I think it was just his hesitation to pull the trigger before he could do that.
Yes. So that, Vivek, that point that you mentioned again of how the United States, it's like literally gun country, and you have people walking around with firearms. So it literally becomes very difficult for law enforcement officials to tell the difference between a normal civilian carrying a weapon and a potential assassination threat. But in India, what would you think the lessons would be for Indian security agencies who are, watching this as closely as we are today? What do you think would be the potential lessons for us, and how do we prepare for these kind of incidents, to avert these kind of incidents, a repeat of such incidents in India? What would the SOPs that specialists like yourself would draw from this incident of Donald Trump?
No, even before I get into that point, there's an important point that we all ought to discuss here, which is that the sniper, I believe, who was covered the most after that video came out was a police sniper. So most likely he's a state police sniper, right?
Right.
And you might think that state police snipers, the army guys are better off. Our experience, FBI, SWAT teams, some of them have the best possible snipers. Right. So do not underestimate the fact that that guy was a police sniper, maybe a SWAT team sniper, and so he possibly, was a couple of notches below a military sniper. In the US, it's very common to find FBI snipers who are far ahead than even the Navy SEAL snipers. Of course, yes. I'm making a very generic and a very open statement saying that one should not underestimate the sniper quality. And Abhijeet and me, we've had enough instances of having spoken with former retired FBI and police snipers, and very, very good at their jobs.
Yes.
Second thing that I'm still thinking about, and both of us have been talking about this, who actually took the shot that killed the shooter? Was it this guy, or was it somebody else who was located in another in another position? We don't know about that, right?
Right.
Possibly this guy, but we don't know whether somebody else was located in a different vantage point. Again, sticking to the tech side of things, normally, you have a process of getting prepared for these kind of, situations. One is first thing you would do is you would zero the rifle. Right? You would zero the rifle at 100 meters. Now, Abhijeet will tell you what happens the moment you kind of figure out the first shot. The first thing that comes into a guy's mind is where exactly is that shot coming from? The second is what is the distance? You've zeroed your rifle at 100 meters. Now the complications will come. Abhi, I would really like you to kind of talk about the range issue that we have here for a counter sniper.
Yeah. So again, looking at the equipment, what he had just if he was the shooter. So he had a ballistic rangefinder mounted on the telescopic side. Once the weapon is zeroed at 100 meters or 150 meters, 200 meters, depending on the whatever he's zeroed it at. Now, when you calibrate and find your target, the minute you have to, there are two ways he would have taken the shot. He would have held the rifle over, and then he would have either had to correct the optics. But obviously, the correction of optics at this instance, when you're doing a rapid engagement like this, wouldn't be possible. So you would have to visually aim a little higher or lower just to make sure that the target he was looking at is on point of where the rifle is zeroed at. So you are basically recalibrating in a fraction of a second just to ensure that you are engaging the target. So this would have been this probably be the reason why he had to take 2 shots or maybe 3 shots before he actually got the shooter down, because you're basically, your weapon is 0 to 100 meters. So at 100 meters, when you focus and you hit it at the same point of aim, point of impact would be the same, dead zero. But like you said, we saw that it was at 130 yards or 150 yards, whatever it was. So he had to recalibrate between 100 to 200. And in that optic, it's a very fine calculation or very fine margin of error to take that between 130 to 200. You will not be able to see that in the optics, which is there. So that's the reason probably why he took maybe a shot or maybe more to get the shooter down.
Yeah, this is called a standard holdover. I mean, you can either correct it on your scope, but I don't think he would have had the time to do the correction on the scope. He would have basically looked into the reticle and he would have said, okay, fine, I'm going to shoot 2 clicks, 1 click,
or 1 click down, whatever it was.
Exactly.
And that's probably the reason why he would have missed the first shot and then recorrected for the second shot as well.
Right. So we actually saw 2 counter snipers. There was one guy lying prone and another guy on the tripod. And it's quite possible, we saw a tripod which didn't have a weapon on it. So it's quite possible that, this counter sniper actually took his rifle off the tripod and went into like a flat fire scenario where he was level with the sniper and then took that shot.
Probably not, because the usually to stabilize on the tripod, you would have had to mount it really, clamp it really tight on the tripod. Otherwise, usually it is not very stable to use it on the tripod like that. So my guess is he would have taken it from the tripod itself and not gone prone. Probably
Yeah.
the second sniper who was prone probably would have covered him from behind just to make sure that he, even in case something happens to the counter sniper, the first one, the second one is ready to take a shot.
Right, right. So this, when did the tripod actually make its debut, Abhijeet? Because we've seen a lot of, usually sniper rifles are associated with bipods, and you have the shooter lying prone. But where did tripods start making their appearance? And in the TV business, tripods are all about TV cameras, right?
Right.
So, and here we're seeing sniper rifles mounted on tripods. What are the advantages that a tripod gives a counter sniper?
So it all depends on where your point of surveillance or where your point of shooting is going to be at. So a tripod gives you the flexibility. So we have been using a tripod for almost 3-4 years, if I'm not mistaken. You are able to lay the tripod flat and make sure you can take it from a prone shot, or if you have limited space, you can mount the tripod. You can stand up behind the windows, behind the walls. You can stand and just put your muzzle out in the front and just make sure that you are able to cover any angle there. The tripod also has a very specific mount, gives you a full range of motion. Like I mentioned, you are able to take a downhill shot, uphill, a full range of pan motion. All of this is available on a tripod, giving extreme edge, or edge over the any other person who's trying to cover this area. It gives you a wide range of motion for engagement, basically. I think tripods has been used for more than a decade, if I'm not mistaken, in the US. And we've got hold of the tripod over the last 3-4 years, and we've been seeing phenomenal user benefits on that. Although it comes with a little negative point would be is the stability on the tripod, because you're at an uneven position, and this adds a little bit of stability as a factor. But apart
Right.
from that, it's a very good tool to have as a counter sniping or any other modes of operation which you have at.
Right. I was talking to some operators who operate in difficult terrain, mountain terrains, and you can guess where those would be. And they were talking about the advantages of downslope sniping with the tripod.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
is something, that's a threat scenario that's very recent. It's about 4 years old. But Vivek, now since we're talking so much about snipers, counter snipers, shooters, this is an area that's so new for us in India, and the fact that SSS Defence is literally having to educate the people about the utility of sniper rifles. It's some kind of an esoteric art. It's been around for a long time in the West, more than 100 years. And the interesting point is that sniping itself is a word that's of Indian origin, right? You had the British officers who were nearly 200 years back. They were shooting the birds called snipes, and that's how the word sniping originated. But despite that, I think we seem to be a little backward when it comes to sniping, sharpshooting in India. I think we possibly are the only large military in the world that does not have a dedicated sniper training school. We have great shooters and snipers and sharpshooters, I'm sure, at the unit level and special forces units. But do you think there is a requirement for a very specialized training institution like a sniper school? That's something that, defense commentators in
Absolutely.
India have
There's no
been
doubt
raising.
about this. There's no doubt about this. This is long time coming. We have a tendency to kind of feel very comfortable with the fact that we've got good shooters. There is always this concept which comes in saying that, hey, what really matters is the shooter. It is the art. It is no longer about the art. It is as much about the science. And fine. I mean, let's, for example, think about whether this idea of it's all about the shooter makes sense or not. It used to make sense, but the complications of warfare, mission criteria, all of these are instances which call for an upgradation of skills. Let me give you examples, right? We've gone into countries where guys go take the pains of hand loading ammunition. What is the reason why someone should hand load ammunition? I mean, you got factory ammunition, which is available in plenty. You go out, you hand load ammunition because you want to be optimal for your rifle. Okay. They go into the pains of figuring out as to what is a rifle twist rate. They go into the pains of figuring out as to what is your muzzle brake going to be like? They go into the pains of identifying suppressors, because as much as you want to kind of shoot accurately, you also don't want to give your position away so easily. Okay. Now, we don't have any idea of many of these things. You might have a handful of guys in the Indian armed forces, the special operations guys, the urban combat guys, the police guys, the anti-Naxal teams, and all of that. Maybe a handful of guys have got this understanding, but we're woefully inadequate. And I believe we're woefully inadequate in something like this, which is actually asymmetric warfare. One sniper can take off, let's say, 20 targets, and he can kind of put in the fear of God into your enemy. We've had snipers on the other side putting in the fear of God into us. That's the actual fact. And we know this very, very well as well. But we've not gone into this because we tend to have this feeling that it is all about the individual. Now, it's all okay, 1970s, 1980s kind of warfare. You had the Dragunov sniper rifle, which actually speaking is a DM1. It's a designated marksman rifle, not exactly a sniper rifle. But they tend to kind of, impose so much of faith on that. And the other reason that I believe that we don't have a focus on sniping is because it's technology intensive, right? Anything which is technologically intensive means you've got to prepare for it. You've got to have a guy sitting on it for 5 years, maybe 10 years. Not someone comes into a unit, does 3 years worth of training and then walks off, and the next posting for him is, let's say, as a staff officer. That's not how it works, right? So you need to have
a full-time job.
Yeah, you need to have right. Yeah, you need to have officer cadre people. You need to have people who are strong, tactically speaking, and who need to kind of work on the technology side of things, upgrade themselves. That's what we try to bring on board. See, in the last 3-4 years, our whole team has basically been trying to nail down the technology side of sniping, and that's not purely about making a good gun. It is also about working on the finer things, like very, very small things. Working on the ammunition side of things, working on the scope, how to use reticles, how can we get range, how do we make dope cards? Dope is basically data on prior engagements, right? So if you go across from Bangalore to, for example, Udhampur, you need to have a different dope chart. Abhijeet and the rest of the team have been working on things like that. And just because it's technology intensive and you need to have that training, we've not focused on it. Unfortunately, we are too late at this point in time.
We're too late at this point of time. Abhijeet, your views on this, the fact that India, possibly the only major country in the world with such a large military, but we still haven't invested in very niche areas like sniping technology. The fact that SSS Defence is the only company in the country to make specialist sniper rifles, that tells you a story. But, moving forward, what are the lessons you think from this incident, this near miraculous escape that Donald Trump witnessed, and the fact that he possibly would have been saved by the police or Secret Service counter-snipers who took down this shooter? What are the lessons for us, really?
So, first of all, a very good point that we have to invest in specialized training schools for snipers. People have to be trained and people have to be dedicated for that profession for a long period of time and not having them on a rotational basis. Technology is available today vastly and easily available for anybody to get hold of this technology, prepare themselves, master themselves in this art. It is an art, but this art can be trained. It can be learned over a period of time and continuous practice over the period of time. You have like laser rangefinders, you have modern day optics, you have night sights, you have mounting accessories, which facilitates and makes the entire process of sniping or long range shooting very adaptable to a user. He can use a different caliber to basically engage on different targets. If somebody is not very good at say 1,200 meters, take a smaller caliber like a 7.62 that can be doing up to 600 to 800 meters, which the other guy who we might think is not good at 1,200 might be very good at. So have a different range of for operational demand, basically based on operation demands, engagement of 600 meters, 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters. You have different caliber of weapons with different technology available for them to train and practice and then basically just execute when it's really required. This could be very easily done just with enough training, investment in new technology, modern technology which is available for in the market. This is very much possible right now.
Right, the rifle is just about 50%. The remaining 50% is all about, getting yourself comfortable with the weapon, growth on the weapon, right? This is almost like learning an aircraft. To be honest with you, it gets better as you use it, and as you kind of start using it in missions, your instinct starts taking over in a much better fashion.
Right. Your instinct starts taking over. And these are very valid points, Vivek. The fact that you mentioned that how, it's an art and it's a science as well. And this is something that we've been, we've not actually invested in these kind of technologies for decades. It's time for us to catch up. But what are the other lessons, essentially, from this, Vivek, for bodyguard protection units, special forces? Apart from the fact that sniping is so important, it's critical to have counter-sniping units. It's critical to have a cadre of trained sharpshooters who would be used across the spectrum in all the kind of terrain that the Indian forces are deployed in, whether it's in the LOC, LAC, internal security missions. But what are the other big takeaways from this? This is actually, like you mentioned at the beginning.
If you understand this, the simplest takeaway is this: in war or in
Yes.
crowd situations, you could have one guy taking out your leader, taking out a brigadier, taking out a major general, or taking out your colonel, and there it is. You've just kind of miscalculated everything. So you understand this. It's pure asymmetric warfare that a sniper can bring into the equation. So all the more important that we kind of put emphasis on sniping, understand the technology behind it, and like Abhijeet mentioned, it's all available, but it's available in niche places. For example, we've developed a lot of capabilities in that space, but you go across to a whole lot of other guys who make weapons, even in the US and other places, and they wouldn't have a clue about sniping because that's not what they do. They just work on pistols. The guy who's working on pistols has no understanding of sniping. He doesn't care about, sniper rifles and the likes. So that's one part. The second important thing is this, that you saw in this particular instance, you had possibly very good snipers on your side, and yet a crunch situation came in and you failed, right? I'm not talking about the failure on the part of the special, the Secret Service in terms of cordoning that area. I'm talking about the fact that you could have identified the target before and, finished off the job, but you failed. So I guess besides having sniper training schools, you also need to have people with the right capabilities, practicing a lot.
Yes.
Practicing not only on the art of shooting, but practicing on the mind. What exactly would be your modus operandi in this particular situation vis-a-vis another situation, right? And practice is the only way you can get better at sharpshooting. Understand this, right? We've got people who came out of the special services, your special forces, only use the Dragunov sniper rifle. Thought that the bolt action rifle would kind of require no cocking right in the beginning, right? And some of those guys today, because they've just been practicing with us for the last 3 years, got even better than several of the international shooters that we've seen. Okay, so again, contextual, working on the mind, training, constant training on the job. That's the only way that you're able to neutralize a situation of this sort. As I see it, President Trump is very lucky. The counter snipers, very lucky that they managed to neutralize this guy, and the other guy was not possible. Very good shot. Imagine a situation if this guy was taking a shot not at 150 meters, but at 1,000 meters. And he was a good sniper.
Yes. Right. I mean, then as Abhijeet mentioned, we would have been talking of a whole different set of circumstances today. But again, the President Trump, incredibly lucky, those first couple of shots, and he ducked. His bodyguards pushed him down, and the counter snipers then knocked out the shooter. But Abhijeet, any other big lessons? Vivek had this very important thing to say about that, the fact that it's all about training the mind to be prepared for all these kind of scenarios. And this obviously is something that our bodyguard protection units would be studying very closely, from Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's assassination right down to the attempt on Donald Trump's life. What are the other big lessons, according to you, as a practitioner of this very, very specialized thing of sharpshooting?
Looking at this entire scenario, first thing would be operational preparedness. basically identify high risk points, low risk points, also improve security where people are moving around so that this kind of situation does not repeat itself. Then obviously training in having snipers at strategic locations, not having a sniper at an odd location where he does not have a vantage point. So having
Right.
these kind of operational preparedness, operational tactical advantage, having technology, and obviously situational awareness, and training the soldiers to be aware. And even if such an instance happen, not blackout for a second or two, because that blackout for a second or two, even is not prepared, can change the whole dynamics of the situation. Having them train rigorously, as a matter of fact, even be it assault rifle training, room intervention training, sniper training, it all comes back to a point of training. The more you train, I think the more better you are prepared, and you are able to execute and protect whatever you are protecting much better than this.
Right, absolutely. Lots of lessons there for India from this very near miss that Donald Trump saw in Pennsylvania, where a shooter nearly assassinated him. Incredibly lucky, Donald Trump. He's back in the race again. He came out waving his fist. Lessons for everyone across the world, all the security forces that will be looking at this very closely, bodyguard protection units, like I said. But thanks very much, Vivek Krishnan, Abhijeet BS, for joining us this afternoon to talk about this. Two of the very, very big Indian experts in this very rarefied field of sniping, sharpshooting, counter-sniping. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Thank you.